Parish is going to be teaching a lesson tonight. I dropped a real heavy hint last week that this could take 6 months if he wanted to, but anyway, I'm looking forward to the lesson tonight. I know it's going to be interesting, but we appreciate you all coming. For those of you that weren't up front, we're going to begin next Wednesday night early at 6 o'clock. If you can come in a little early to have prayer for our revival meeting, prayer for our country, both of those very serious prayer concerns for us. And we have several in our church family in need of prayer. Do remember them. But we welcome you tonight. Appreciate you coming in, and let's pray for Brother Donald.
2 weeks ago, I'm thinking Brother Stapleton's message centered around kind of the concept of evidence for Christianity in the broad sense, evidence for Jesus in a more focused sense, and he spoke about secular texts and sacred texts and basically the witness that we have for Christianity. And he spoke a little bit about the early historians of the Roman world in his sermon. So a few days later, I saw Brother Stapleton and I told him that I had in fact been working on for literally a period of months a lesson series that would be loosely titled Christianity and the Roman Empire. Christianity and the Roman Empire. And that I was kind of thinking about doing it in our Sunday school class, but if he thought better, it was available, I could do it on a Wednesday night. So we're not going to take 6 months, but by the same token, we may take a few weeks, because this is a very, very involved topic, and I want to be sure that I can lay the background for the material so that you can see the significance at each step along the way. We Missionary Baptists do not put a lot of emphasis on, so to speak, our religious history. We just don't traditionally have church schools. We don't traditionally have a lot of teaching that goes beyond just kind of the words of Christ, so to speak, the background material in the Old Testament that sets us up for the story of Jesus. But there is so much other material out there that's available for our study and will make us better informed Christians. And I want to spend a few weeks in these discussions talking about that. So Peter writes in 2 Peter, I think Brother Lynn, you used this scripture maybe last week or this past Sunday. Peter writes that we are not following what?
Cunning devices.
Yeah, we are not following cunningly devised fables. So the subtitle we'll kind of be working with for the next few weeks is Cunningly Devised Fables versus Christianity. If something is cunningly done, that means what? Deceiving. Hey, I like that. You put some thought into it as well. Something that's cunningly done just didn't happen. It's not dumb luck, is it? It was intentional. And you do think of deceitful. I agree. It generally has a negative connotation. Devised. If something is devised, it is what? Planned. Yeah, that's right. Now, truth can be planned, but truth is not always planned. It's just what it is, right? So as Peter is using the expression here, if you have devised something, you've put some time into purposefully planning. And you know what a fable is. A story. Now, certainly a fable could be true, but generally speaking, we accept that if you call something a fable, it's probably not true. A story can be true or not. I could tell you a story or any number of stories about my grandparents, for example, things that I remember from my youth. True, but not necessarily have to be. So we're not following cunningly devised fables, we're following Christianity. Before Christianity existed, people followed cunningly devised fables. That was the religion, generally speaking, of antiquity. So what about the Romans? I know that you don't know just how Roman you are. I mean right now, as you sit in this room. And certainly I don't know the full extent of that myself. So I want to spend just a little bit of time giving you the kind of the background for just how Roman you are. And just how the Roman world has impacted Christianity, and Christianity has impacted the Roman world. So the map on the screen is entitled Map of the Roman Empire at its Greatest Extent. And it's also highlighted with the dashed line here indicating the extent of the Roman Empire at the time of Jesus. The borders of the Roman Empire, of course, waxed and waned. They grew and shrunk over periods of hundreds of years. So we need to have at least a working understanding of the area of the world that we're talking about here. How many of you had a class in school on the history of Western civilization? Several of you. Yeah, you had Western Civ. How many of you liked Western Civ? Oh my, I got a hard job then ahead of me. Well, you may not have appreciated fully the concepts of Western Civ at the time that you were involved in the class, and maybe you'll appreciate more of that now. So the area of the world that we're talking about is the area of Europe to the north, Asia to the east, Africa to the south, and the Middle East as well here. Now in modern times, to orient you, this is the Isles of Britain. Ireland is here. This is Great Britain. Great Britain was generally populated by pretty uncivilized folks prior to the arrival of the Romans. The Romans conquered Great Britain, or what we know of today as Great Britain, in the 200s. AD. Starting here in the west, this is modern Spain, France, Italy, Germany, the small countries that exist now, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Lithuania, all of these countries that we know about today but are modern countries would be in generally this area, never a part of the Roman Empire. And then, of course, farther to the east is modern-day Russia. This is Asia Minor. It is the location of modern Turkey. And this area here is, right here, is modern Greece. Italy, as I said, and Rome is located about right there on the Mediterranean. For reference, this is Judea at the time of Christ, also known as Palestine, named for the Philistines. Not a particularly important area in the Roman world but for one thing, which we'll get to. Other Middle Eastern countries, and then this is North Africa. The major North African city that became Roman was Alexandria, located right here on the coast in Egypt. So, Rome. Rome is a lot of things. It's different things. And when we say Rome and we talk about, we've got to be more specific than just saying Rome. Okay? Rome starts out as being a city-state, more appropriately, meaning that within this very small defined area on the map that I showed you, Roman culture is developed, Roman government is developed, and the population considers themselves as citizens of Rome. It's not a country. It's not an empire. It's not a kingdom. It is just a big city. There are many myths, fables, if you will, about how Rome is established. Probably the most well-known story, some of you will recognize that Rome is founded by two brothers, Romulus and Remus, who were abandoned at birth, and as they grew up in the area of Rome, Romulus became the more dominant, and Romulus is supposed to have killed his brother Remus, and therefore he gets to name the city that is built after himself, Rome. It would have been Rheims, I guess, had the other brother won. So Rome, the city, is established, and historians agree on this point. This is one of the points certainly that there's not significant controversy about, that Rome is established as a city 753 years before the birth of Christ. So another way of saying that, 753 BC, or as is commonly said in Italian, AC, Antichrist, not A-I-N-T-I, A-N-T-E, like the word antebellum or an anteroom, coming before Christ. So you may see, particularly in an Italian designation, the birth of the city of Rome, 753 AC. Now, y'all know I like history, so on my trip to Rome, I got a t-shirt. Been there and got the t-shirt, right? That's the saying. And you'll notice that the time, or the letters here say, established or since 753 AC. So Rome has been a real sure enough place. How many years is that? 2,773, if my quick math is right. Years. That's a long time. Okay. Anything that's around that long is going to influence other things around it, of course. So that's Rome, the city. But Rome begins to expand over the decades and over the centuries. Rome looks to gain wealth and gain people, gain territory, such that Rome transitions from being just a city located on the Italian peninsula here, like many other cities, like ancient Athens, for example, a Greek city, to a republic. Okay. A republic may have a monarch governing it, like a king or a queen, but they could also have others assisting in running the country, and that's largely what the case was in Rome. As Rome expanded in territory, more and more people were required to handle the day-to-day running of the country, so to speak, the business affairs of the country, more and more people became involved in Roman high society, shall we say. Rome transitions from just being a city to being a much larger scale republic. And that means that the influence of Rome begins to spread from here all up and down the Italian peninsula and in a larger area around the Mediterranean. Now this phase of the development of the history of Rome would last for, let's just ballpark it at 700 years, 7 centuries. From 753 or so, when BC, when Rome is established as a city, to about 50 years or so before the birth of Christ. Roman politics was a blood sport, essentially. You think you live in rough times, and you turn on the evening news, and I know, I do the same, and you shake your head, and well, man, things are out of control. We live in a metropolis, in a peaceful metropolis, compared to the people of Rome. They were in constant war, constant state of civil war with not only themselves, but the others around them. Now, you need to know a couple of things about some traditions. Because of the warring nature of the Romans, there developed certain traditions within Rome among the ruling class, and particularly within the military ruling class. If Roman generals, for example, went off into some other part, let's say they had ventured up here into modern-day France. In antiquity, we might have called it Gaul. On this map, it's referred to as Gallia. And won a big battle. If they brought their army back to Rome, tradition held that that general was not to come back into the city of Rome with his troops. You had to essentially disband your army, leave your army north of the Rubicon River, which is north of the city of Rome, and you could come back in yourself, and your army could come back after it was disbanded. But if you came back into Rome with your army, it was a sign that you didn't mean well necessarily for the ruling class within the city of Rome. And this is repeated. So as we transition from this concept of a Roman Republic, where many people formed the government, they participated in what we call today a Senate. They called it a Senate as well. So that's where we get our name, Senate. It comes from Rome, because the Roman Senate was made up of upper class folks who were, generally speaking, native Romans who had done rather well, and they had been selected to participate in running of the government. So the Senate doesn't want a general to come back in with an army into the city of Rome for fear that it would incite local revolution. If that happened, you could pretty much guarantee civil war was about to occur. So in about the year 44, before the birth of Christ, this very event takes place. And a Roman general does come in to Rome. He crosses the Rubicon River. That's the genesis of the phrase that we still use today. Now, if you do that, you've crossed a Rubicon. You've crossed a line, and there will be consequences for you having done that. The Senate in Rome recognizes the situation, and they essentially capitulate and declare that that general, Caesar, will now rule Rome as essentially a dictator. You still have a Senate, but the power of the Senate is much, much less over this period of time that we're talking about. So Rome, the city, still exists, but the Roman Empire is, the Roman Republic is bigger, and then the Roman Empire, from that point forward, just before the birth of Christ, becomes what we're talking about when we speak about Rome. See, there are three steps here: city, republic, and empire. And the empire is what we're talking about here. The empire comes to the point that we have to have more land, more natural resources, more wealth, more population, and the way to do that is to conquer this territory. So originally, as Rome develops, Rome has nothing whatsoever to do with Judea. Not a thing. And the importance of the connection of the city of Rome, the Republic of Rome, and the Empire of Rome is that how do you get a camel from somewhere in this area to down here, or from down here back to Rome? How do you do that? Well, either you trust the weather and the seas. Some of you have probably been out on the Mediterranean Sea. It can get pretty rough on the Mediterranean Sea. If that's the case, well, you get yourself a boat. Go right across here. But the weather's bad. It's very risky. Lots of pirates. No police force. Nobody to call. Now, you're on your own. So the other way is, if you want to get your camel from Africa here and the goods on the back of your camel, you've got to do it by land. And if you do it by land, you want it to be the shortest land route generally possible, right? And if you do that, then you're going to stick close to the Mediterranean, and look where you got to go through. Judea/Palestine. You've got to have a land route that can be secure to move people and goods and ideas and wealth. So as the Roman Empire expands, they're looking to have secure trade routes, secure transportation routes. And the Romans develop a pretty sophisticated system of roads to accomplish those things within the Roman Empire. And one of those roads, well, let's just call it the coastal highway for our purposes here, runs right through here. Judea, named for the presence of the Jews. So, how many of you have got something Roman with you tonight? I got a t-shirt. Anybody else got anything Roman? I bought that from a street vendor in Rome. Yeah, you do. You just don't know it. Open up. If you got a wallet or your purse, open it up. Come on, play along with me. Open it up. This will be more fun if you'll play along, I promise. Be less painful and everything. See if you got anything that looks like this in your wallet.
Hey, everybody.
You see that from that wallet.
Yeah. Okay. Now, look at the back side. What I would say is not the face side, but the back side of the dollar bill. Anything Roman about that? What?
The all-seeing eye?
Ah, the all-seeing eye. Pretty close. The all-seeing eye is probably an Egyptian concept along with the pyramid, but you're right there at it. What does it say above the all-seeing eye? Yeah, I know. You can't pronounce it, right? Annuit coeptus. Annuit coeptus. That's Latin. And the rough translation is, he approves of what it is we're doing, or he approves of our undertaking. Now, the Romans spoke Latin, generally. The real Romans. Of course, the Romans that, were here in North Africa, maybe not in conquered territories, but I'm saying if you were a citizen of Rome, living in Rome, your granddaddy came from Rome, you spoke probably Latin, and you wrote in Latin. So keep looking at your dollar bill. What about the phrase underneath the pyramid? You see it? Novus Ordo Seclorum. Novus Ordo Seclorum. It means the new order of the ages. The new order of the ages. Then, if you look over on the opposite side, on the Great Seal of the United States, I can see some of you really squinting. You're trying to... Yeah, and I am too, by the way. The motto of the United States, E pluribus unum. Out of many, one. Out of many, one. That's the Roman/Latin phrase meaning out of many, one. Now, if you wanted to put on your dollar bill, if you're the folks in charge of designing the dollar bill, and you want to tell people what year it is that maybe your country was formed, you might very well put on, if you're an American, you might very well put on what year? 1776. You'll find 1776 on your money. It's in Roman numerals. You'll have to look really hard for that one. Look at the base of the pyramid. The very, very base of the pyramid. In Roman numerals, it says 1776. So on your dollar bill, there are 4 Roman/Latin phrases. I tell you that to make the point, you're more Roman than what you really knew. Okay? In lots of different ways, more of which we'll talk about. So, let's just talk about a few of them right now, as a matter of fact. We'll go ahead and go there. So you thought, well, Donald's being cute. That's kind of a tricky thing to talk about, isn't it? Let's talk about your language for a moment. This is a list of common Latin words and phrases in English, some of which you will not recognize, I realize, but some of which you will. Look at number 4, ad hoc. Ever served on an ad hoc committee or heard the phrase ad hoc? It means we just got it up right now to deal with this particular circumstance. In other words, you might have a standing committee within a body, like our church, for example, but then you would have an ad hoc committee that's appointed just to deal with one particular issue. For example, at least since I've been a part of HMBC, every time there's a significant building project, there's a building committee appointed, right? You all probably had the same experience. That's an ad hoc committee. It was appointed to deal with one specific circumstance, and when that circumstance is complete, it's dissolved. It doesn't exist forever. Ad hoc. The definition being for a particular situation. Ad infinitum. So Brother Lynn indicated that I might talk about this ad infinitum. Just on and on, you know. You know what ad infinitum means. What about ad lib, number 7, short for ad libitum. If I'm ad-libbing, I don't have a script, right? So 98% of what I've been saying tonight, I've been ad-libbing. I don't have a script. I got an outline, and most of it's up here, but I've been ad-libbing. Latin phrase. If you get tired of what I'm saying, you might consider that I have gone on ad nauseum. Number 8, you become nauseous that I've been talking so long. Number 9, and there's a whole lot of legal terms in here and some medical terms as well. You're going to recognize some of them. An affidavit. If you give an affidavit, you're swearing that the contents of that document's true. And you give affidavits all the time. You buy and sell a car, you give an affidavit essentially that the odometer reading is right. You sign a statement that says under penalty of law, either I don't know what the mileage is or it's X. That's an affidavit. It's a Latin term and a Latin concept. Alias, number 11, also known as somebody else. In my life, some people know me as Donald, other people know me as Don. I mean, that's not necessarily an alias, but if I was known to other people as Frank, that very well might be an alias. Alibi, number 12. I wasn't there. I don't know. I don't know nothing about that. I was not there. Number 10, all of you have probably an alma mater, right? Some of you got more than one alma mater. It's a Latin phrase, school from which one graduated, but the original context meaning a nurturing, that's not right, nurturing, nourishing, good, thank you. I should have looked. A nourishing mom. Somebody with a parental bent. Alter ego. Number 14, AD, Anno Domini. We use it all the time, don't we? It's a Latin phrase, Anno Domini, in the year of our Lord. Some other very common ones, 15, AM, antemeridium. I just used the ante a moment ago. Antemeridium, AM, before noon. We may see it, PM, postmeridium, is up here as well. Let's see some other fun ones. 20, bona fide. If something's bona fide, it's the real deal. Carpe diem, you see that a lot. Seize the day, pretty common t-shirt. Consensus, number 28. Let's come together and let's reach a consensus. When you do that, you're talking Latin. CV, curriculum vitae. It's kind of your history, your resume, the course of one's life. If something is de facto, that's a legal term, meaning it may not be entirely brought about by law, but it exists in fact. Let's say in a government, if we were to say the government is a de facto government, you would be saying, well, whoever is in charge, they may not have been lawfully elected, but they are in charge. So they are the de facto government, as opposed to de jure, which means as a matter of law. In the same example, someone who had been elected or in response to a legal procedure. 38, doctor. Brother Carter is a doctor of medicine. I'm a doctor of law. Juris doctor, that's a Latin phrase meaning doctor of law. Let's see. Et tu, Brute. You know the source of that perhaps. There's e pluribus unum that we talked about. A lot of legal terms here. Look at number 50. I didn't know this. Number 50, facsimile. Facsimile as a written term or Latin term. And think about it, facsimile has changed essentially names within our lifetime or meaning within our lifetime. Originally, in our speech, facsimile would have meant a copy, right? It's not the original, but it's a facsimile. Today, that's not what facsimile really means to most of us when we use it, right? It is a copy, but it's one that came out of that machine that you sent by telephone wire or something. We call that a fax, right? So within the course of our lifetime, just the meaning of the word facsimile has changed. Latin, I remember the first fax machine that I saw. It was huge. You know, it was this big device and had a big drum on it. And somehow it turned real fast, and on the other end of a telephone line, a picture of that document came out. Mind-blowing that such a thing could be possible. Let's see, more fun, quick facts. In camera means to do something in chambers. Almost every day I do things as a judge in camera, meaning I do them in chambers as opposed to on the bench. Number 61, if you're in extremis, if the doctor yells out, "Come right now, Lynn Stapleton is in extremis, stat," he's in bad shape. He is just before going to the next step. He is in extremis. He's at the end of his road. Number 67, if you're operating incognito, don't nobody know who you are. You know, that's Lynn Stapleton at the emergency room wearing a costume. He's incognito. We don't recognize him. He doesn't have on his tie. Mea culpa, 78. It's my fault. I am sorry, Sister Nan. I'm at fault. That's mea culpa. You know, I am so sorry. It's my fault. What's your MO? What's your MO? What's your modus operandi? Meaning, what are you doing? You know, how did you do this? And if you do it repeatedly, it becomes a pattern. So it's a model of operation, usually used in the concept of maybe bad actors. What's their modus operandi when they begin to break into folks' houses and that sort of thing. Per capita, percent, 85 per se, or per se, pardon me, pro rata. Anybody ever wrote a PS? Yeah, you wrote a PS, a postscriptum. Quid pro quo. Hey, there's a word you've heard in the last few months. Quid pro quo. You give me this, I'll do that for you. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. Latin. So, in the history of civilization, in the history of the world, there are probably 3 events that have shaped history the most significantly. The first one is a collection of events whereby the Romans gave up their Roman gods and converted to Christianity. Okay, that's going to be the focus of our lessons over the next few weeks. Another one is when the sailor Christopher Columbus sailed across the ocean blue you know that, and found the New World. Thought he was in India, of course, but he was right here in the New World. And what did he bring? What did he bring? He brought, of course, Christianity to the New World. And the third, I would say, development in that list would be the Industrial Revolution, which happens over a period of many years, many decades, but it allows for the transmission of information, goods, and people over a very wide area. Christianity is no longer just a Eurasian, Mediterranean Sea religion, because you can now transmit ideas and printed text all over the world as a part of, in the big picture, the Industrial Revolution. We'll focus on the first of those concepts throughout the course as we try to answer this big picture question, how it is that the Roman people were converted in a relatively short period of time from paganism to Christianity. That'll be the focus that we'll pick up on next week. I realize I ran over a few minutes tonight. I apologize for that, but this is a good stopping point. Any questions about that before we break up? All right. Well, thank you for being here this evening. I had fun. I hope y'all did.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.